positions at companies such as Oberon Securities, View Trade Securities, Goldman Sachs, and PwC. So Ed, welcome. Get you set up.
Okay, so I'll try to be quick because it's late and everybody wants to go home or get a beer or something. So Verify was created several years ago as a banker. I had a deal that I was working on, and we were selling a company. And after doing some work on them, we got them into the market. Someone was made a bid that was the winning bid. They started diligence and they call us and they said, "Listen, we can't verify the CEO's degree. Can you find out what's going on?" And we said, "Sure." So we called the CEO and he said, "Listen, didn't you say that you went to this and this university?" He goes, "Yeah, I went to I just did a few courses." And we said, "Okay, that's terrible. You said that you had a degree. So can you tell us at least which courses you did so at least we can get back to them with something?" And he said, "Well, I didn't really do any courses, but I really wanted to go to that university." So suffice it to say, the deal blew up, and I started looking around, and as someone who's done banking for a while, I realized that everybody does the same thing. Everybody goes to background check companies, and all background check companies, bar none, suck. And the information there is inaccurate. It's all third-party based. It's exactly like credit reporting agencies. Thank you for that layup. They all go to the same databases, and they all get the same crappy information, and they all repeat the others' mistakes. So there's no real good way to do this. So that brought us to the idea of self-sovereign identity without blockchain. That was, at least for me, it was pre-blockchain, even though it was just a few years ago. And the idea is to, and again, maybe a little bit counterintuitively, to get the user to populate their own profile, get it verified via first party, as opposed to all these regurgitating processes, and then let the user do whatever they want with it. So that's the process, that's the concept behind Verify. And with blockchain, so the eureka moment hit, obviously a little bit later than people that bought Bitcoin at 10 cents. But there's a natural fit with what we can do with blockchain and the immutability of the records and the decentralization and ownership and so forth to the records themselves and to the underlying or the resulting identity that comes from this. So Equifax, right? So it's perfect. Everybody in this room probably got hacked, or most people in the room, including me. And like this gentleman said earlier, we didn't get paid for it. They didn't really get fined for it. Hopefully they'll go bankrupt because of it. Well, the reason I'm saying that is because there are lawsuits that are more than their market cap by 3 or 4 times. So fingers crossed. And the idea is that they mine our data. We don't have any idea what they do with it, who they sell it to, how much they have, and they have much more than just your basic employment or bank account information. They have your information from Comcast. Like they buy from Comcast your browsing history, your cookies, your hashtags. It's insane the amount of data that they mistreat and just let out and give Russians or Chinese or anybody else access to now. So the idea is to take it all back, give it to the user, and let the user say, if I'm applying to a job, I want to make sure that I know what's going to be reported to that HR manager. And if I say I have a degree, then the degree is there and it's verified. Or if I want to claim something that's not true, it's going to be much more difficult for me. So it makes that whole process a little bit different. So this is a low resolution of what it is. But the idea is that you enter your different things that you've done in life, your professional career, you enter your employment, you enter your education, and you get verified through a centralized process. And if you enter something that's not true, it gets rejected, or if it's in the process of being processed, it's in process. And then all of these things are scored. And so if you have 1 degree or 2 degrees, or you have 1 employment verified or 2, or if you have a rejection or whatever it is, it all calculates on a score, which is, you can make an analogy to a FICO score, but essentially it's your identity score. So the score itself is determined by the different parts of the identity, or the different components of the identity that are within your own personal vault. And then when you go to the actual image or so forth, you can see your identity score, you see how it scales, and you can share it. Everything here is shareable, so you can share. For a real estate broker, you want to go and rent an apartment, and they say, we need to get a confirmation from your current employer that you're employed, so you can share just your current employment. Or you can do much more if you want to apply for a mortgage and so forth and so forth. So when we added blockchain to this, we enabled we gave the ability to actually start putting these things on the blockchain and making the records immutable. The records themselves don't sit on the blockchain because that would be prohibitively expensive, if someone mentioned earlier. But there's references to off blockchain and to other solutions that we're currently working on. This has been in market for a year as the credential verification, and the identity and the blockchain parts of it were added late last year. And what we do with this, and it doesn't show it on this image, but we have a KYC module as well. So someone was asking earlier about KYC and reusable KYC, right? I think it was you, the gentleman at the end. So the idea is, let's say I'm an ICO freak. I like to invest in as many ICOs as I can. You give them a passport, you give them your address, you give them, or in that scenario, I'm the intermediary, all that information, and then in April? No, not in April. Late last year, there was a KYC company that did this for an ICO, and the ICO company held all the information and got hacked, and all of those IDs now are floating all over the place. There is no reason why you couldn't use it. So I met with a very, very, very large bank and said, listen, if we can provide you this information, a copy of a driver's license or a copy of a passport and so forth, with the attached information that's relevant, which means your form, would that be valuable, or would you accept that? And the initial response was yes, and now, of course, it's a big bank, so you have to go up that ladder, and it can take 10 years. But there's no reason why identities and the underlying parts that make the identity, and in this scenario, KYC is like a passport or a driver's license, will not be reusable, and again, managed and owned by the user himself. There's no reason to give it to that person, and then to give it to that person, and then to that person. Every time you do it, you increase the possibility of your identity being hacked. So we do that today. We have clients today that are paying us to do KYC for ICOs, and then we're starting to talk to exchanges, and we're starting to talk to banks. So this is a very interesting process. And what it does for us also, it adds more and more, global users. So we're in that process of preliminary growth from that revenue perspective. So this is just a very, very high-level diagram that kind of talks how this, or shows how this works. So the individual enters the information into their profile. It receives a blockchain ID or transaction ID on it, and there's some processing done there as well to validate the information as it's being sent from the user, and then it goes out to be verified. Again, via some processes that we've developed over the years to get the information to be verified by whomever the data providers are, and then it goes back to the user. So it starts from here and it goes back. So it was orange when it started, it's green when it comes back, and then the user can decide who to share it with. And there's other parts involved here. We have our own systems that help with algorithms that are running in AI and machine learning and OCR and a bunch of other things that make this useful and usable and user-friendly. So people would love to use this again and again and again for KYC or for the bank or for mortgage or for whatever it is. So we're just in that infancy stage of just having users starting to understand what it is and how it could work, and how blockchain actually adds value at different points of interaction with the system and with the actual user. So funny enough, the things that you said, that you don't want people to promote an ICO. We were going to do an ICO October last year. Joe over there was very helpful. He was our attorney of record. And based on that advice and other things, we decided to not do an ICO because I like standing here and talking to you and not being in jail. And this is the current environment in the United States. In May 10th or somewhere in June or somewhere it might change a little bit. But we believe that the power of what this does is a fundamental building block to the whole blockchain industry. There is really, in my view, my humble view, there is no way that the large e-commerce players or financial institutions or a car dealer or whatever it is will interact with people on a regular basis if they can't know who they are. So anonymity is great on one end, but you have to actually know who you're dealing with on some transactions, and we see that as the lion's share of the world market in general. So the anonymity and how you do it is wonderful, but at the end of the day, in the real world, I want to know that if I'm selling someone something, if someone wants to buy a car and comes into the shop, I need to know who they are, and so forth and so forth. So it's an identity, a mobile, a web-based digital identity, owned by the user, managed by the user, and access can be revoked by the user and so forth. And we are pretty proud of this. And some members of my team are here, and we're local to Philly, and love to hear if anybody has any questions. And sorry, I'm sneezing all the time. I have allergies, so I'm not contagious or anything as far as I know. Sir, yeah.
I'm pretty interested in your data provider piece. How do you identify a data provider and allow them to write the node or write the actual verification on the blockchain?
It's complicated.
Do you give them a certificate?
It's complicated. We have to validate that they're real.
Right. And is that done through a certificate?
So it's done on non-blockchain right now, but it is going that way.
Okay. And who verifies the data provider?
Me.
So it is a central. Okay. So
Right now, there is crowdsourcing. There is crowdsource intelligence. There is, the whole mining concept behind it of how things are done and how do you verify a block or not. But that's beyond the scale of.
Would this also require every single data provider to go through that process? So every single university, every single employer would have to.
They don't know that they go through that process. They don't. It's not an overhead for them. It's an overhead for me.
So let's say somebody wants to get verified at employment at City Hall, whatever it is. How does the City Hall data provider actually issue the verification if they don't have a certificate to do it?
They don't. So this is my view again. Blockchain purists, technologists, engineers, awesome. Real world, the person that does the verification, the HR manager at City Hall, doesn't know what blockchain is, doesn't want to know what blockchain is, doesn't care what a certificate is. They want to press a button. And that's what we enable.
Okay, so you provide that middle piece.
So if you do it now, I'm just interject. Right now, if you ask, actually I worked at Elsevier. I used to be here a couple years ago. And I wanted to be verified. And the first thing many people say is go to the work number, which is ironically a subsidiary of Equifax. You have to pay for that. They go in and then you get information for that. So that's actually right now how verification is done outside of this application. If you want for schools, it's called the clearinghouse, right? If you ever try to get the information that you want. This is trying to bridge that gap.
Yes.
So if I can ask, this is maybe verification 101 for me. I understand there's things like double blind and triple blind and all that. Let me paint a couple scenarios. I get like I could go ahead and make a claim that I went to Rutgers University and somebody could verify the fact that that is actually true.
Who's that somebody?
I gather that's what you help along, right? Because my employer wants to know that I actually got a degree from it. So I said I got it. You help them understand it, but you'd have to have the claim to be able to test it. You don't actually, do you handle my transcript data? And I'm just
I can handle any digital form.
But do you transfer that to the recipient then?
Everything is owned by you. I am just the intermediary.
So I'm thinking maybe a healthcare situation, right? So I have
Same thing. Help.
my history of liver enzyme tests through the course of my life.
Sure.
And I want to be able to create an agency with somebody to be able to see that under certain conditions.
You can share it with them.
Is that what you do? You help to do that sharing? Does the data transfer through your system to them? What prevents them from misusing that data?
What prevents them?
Yeah, the recipient of the data.
What if
And
you
maybe you don't.
you decided to share it with them? It's not my decision.
Okay. So you just
Don't share it with them. If it's a doctor and says, hey, I need to know your liver enzyme data, and you say, I don't want to give it to you, then you may need a different doctor.
Well, I'd like to know my doctor. I don't want to go down.
There's
that
also
rabbit hole.
revocation of access and stuff like
Yeah,
that. That's
so
much more complicated.
When you revoke, does that erase the data, or does it?
You own it. In the simplest manner is they have to go use our system in order to go and see your data as long as they have access.
manager.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's like content, right? You can no longer play the video because the DRM's expired and you don't have a kid on lock.
How do you make money?
Startups need to make money.
Yeah, later.
So think about the background check industry. That, as I said, they're wonderful. You don't make any money as an individual if I run a background check on you. It can cost all the way up to thousands of dollars depending on what the level of access is. The idea is that we'll provide it for, or we already are, at a much lower cost to an employer or to a real estate agent or to a university where you want to do an advanced degree, because our cost of processing it and transmitting it is nominal compared to what a background check has to go through. So,
But I will have to approve.
you don't have to, you don't have to approve, you have to share. You decide, you initiate the process to transfer. So if the employer says, I want to hire you, and you say, I'm not going to give you access, I can't give the employer access on your behalf. I need your permission.
It doesn't cost me, it costs
The employer. Right, in that scenario. And then the other process I mentioned, KYC, so for example, so ICOs pay us in order to run a KYC process for all their interested investors. So we go and process them, they upload the information, we verify it, we put it on the block that give them rights to share it and so forth. But again, the user is the one who says, yes, share my information with this ICO.
Actually, you make money too, because there's incentivization, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When the people that actually are paying to see your stuff, you get a kickback too. The idea is that when they view your stuff, you actually get some kickback as far as.
Here's my insert in the crowd.
and do I give you gradation of you can give him only that much?
So can you go back to the other slide? So you decide what to share. You can share everything, or you can share the identity, or you can share just record, or you can share everything you have.
When you click it, there's different ways of selecting subsets applications. But the idea is that really, the cool thing about this whole blockchain is that you really do own and control it. 30 million, I don't know if it's a part of the business model or not, I'm sorry to interject, on LinkedIn, they're fake profiles. And I teach at Drexel now, and so we're talking about this also in the academia. But it's interesting because you don't know what's real and what's not, and LinkedIn is a source where you think that, you think it's real, right? And then you have the social. So
30 million is the number that LinkedIn publishes, but the assumption is that it's over 10%, which is over 50 million. Sorry. Yes?
Kind of two questions. Have you guys thought about the encryption code signing?
No? Mike, you have good questions. Yes.
Have you looked into what they can truly do to creating verification reputation? And you said
So we are actually going to have a blog post on zero knowledge proof. It's in here, but because I spoke here, I don't have the time to approve it. So probably early next week, and then it's a series of 2. We'll have another one much more technical in the following weeks. So zero knowledge proof is a big part of it. I have a problem with zero knowledge proof, but we have what's called zero knowledge identity. So in an ICO, the ICO needs to know pass, fail, 0, 1. They don't care about anything else. We provide that today. So I can do that. The difference between zero knowledge proof and what I call zero knowledge identity is I'm the intermediary with zero knowledge identity. Whereas with zero knowledge proof, essentially you have a point-to-point. And the authentication is by a mathematical, cumbersome, crazy mathematical formula that nobody really has the time, patience, or desire to understand, but they just want to know 0 or 1. So there's a place for it, and I challenge that a little bit also. But the technology itself has amazing potential in my view. Sorry.
All right, I hate to cut the question short. It is 8:30, so we need to be respectful of Elsevier's time. But thank you everybody for coming out. Just a reminder.